The night began with the sound of a shattered glass. A scream cut through the chatter and music, slicing through the warm laughter of the city's elite gathered under the chandeliers. In that instant, everything changed. Mark Sullivan, a man who once served as an FBI tactical agent but now lived the quiet, uncertain life of a single father, felt his instincts flare alive again, instincts he thought he buried years ago. The scent of wine and fear mingled in the air as the room froze, heads turning toward the sound of chaos at the entrance. Mark's heart clenched, not out of fear for himself, but because his 12-year-old daughter, Emily, was standing barely a few feet away from the podium where the mayor had just been speaking. If you believe in him, please don't forget to your support helps us tell more stories that remind us of the power of humanity. Mark didn't think. He moved. The years of training, the discipline honed through 1,000 near-death encounters, kicked in automatically. He scanned the exits, the crowd, the trembling faces, and then he saw him. A man in a black suit, too rigid, too alert. His eyes darted, his hand concealed inside his jacket. Mark's gut twisted. That unmistakable look of determination mixed with madness, he'd seen it before. It wasn't a thief. It wasn't a drunk protester. It was someone about to make the worst mistake of his life. The gala had been meant as a night of hope, a fundraiser for children who had lost parents to violence. Ironically, the irony was brutal. Mark had been invited reluctantly, dragged along by a friend who worked at the foundation. He never liked crowds, never liked being around reminders of what he'd lost. His wife, Claire, had died 6 years ago, an innocent victim caught in a botched robbery. He left the FBI soon after, unable to reconcile justice with the randomness of pain. Since then, he'd poured his soul into raising Emily, trying to replace her mother's warmth with his own flawed love, but tonight, fate had other plans. The gunman's hand twitched beneath his jacket, and Mark's voice came out deep, firm, and commanding, a tone that silenced rooms even when bullets were flying. "Back away now," he said, stepping forward with both hands raised. The words weren't shouted, but the power in them froze the moment. The would-be attacker locked eyes with Mark, confusion flashing for just a heartbeat. That was enough. Mark closed the distance, lunging forward, grabbing the man's wrist before the weapon could clear the holster. The two collided, the impact sending them both crashing into a table of champagne glasses. The room erupted at screams, chaos, panic. At times slowed. Mark felt every movement, every heartbeat, every ounce of adrenaline as he struggled to control the man's arm. The gun fired once, the sound deafening in the marble hall. The bullet tore into the ceiling, spraying plaster and sparks. Mark twisted hard, disarming the man, slamming his wrist against the table edge until the weapon clattered to the floor. The attacker was young, early 20s, eyes red with something beyond anger. Mark saw it, the pain, the desperation. When security rushed in, the man was already restrained, trembling, muttering something about justice and revenge. But as Mark looked closer, his own heart sank. The name badge on the attacker's chest read Volunteer Staff. He wasn't a hired killer. He was a boy, a volunteer who had lost his parents in a violent crime years ago. The same kind of loss Mark's daughter endured. The same pain that once broke him. Mark stood there, breathless, hands trembling as the police took over. The crowd slowly began to calm, but the atmosphere remained thick with disbelief. The mayor, shaken but unharmed, thanked Mark publicly, calling him a hero. Cameras flashed. Applause broke out. But Mark didn't hear any of it. His gaze drifted to Emily, wide-eyed, pale, clutching her small purse tightly. She looked at him the way she used to look at superheroes. But Mark knew better. Heroes didn't sleep at night haunted by ghosts. Heroes didn't live with guilt. After the chaos subsided and the police escorted the young man away, Mark found himself sitting outside the gala hall, under the cold glow of a streetlight. Emily sat beside him, leaning her head against his arm. "You saved everyone, Dad," she whispered. He wanted to smile, but the weight in his chest wouldn't let him. "I stopped him," he said quietly. "But saving him, that's different." It wasn't just the adrenaline crash, it was the ache of recognition. That boy's eyes mirrored his own after Claire died. The same hollow stare of someone who had lost too much and was desperate to make someone pay. Later that night, when the world seemed to exhale and the flashing lights of police cars faded away, Mark couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of Emily's bed, watching her breathe peacefully. His mind replayed the day over and over, the moment he saw the gun, the panic, the look of pain on the attacker's face. He thought about how easily he could have been on the other side of that moment, if not for Emily. If not for the thin thread of love that had kept him tethered to the world when he wanted to let go. In the days that followed, news outlets hailed him as a hero. Ex-FBI agent saves hundreds at charity gala, the headlines read. Strangers sent letters. The foundation offered awards. But Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper had been left undone. The young man, his name was Ryan Carter, had refused to speak to anyone but confessed later to the police that he'd planned to force the mayor to admit corruption in the charity's management. Money meant for orphans had been disappearing. The revelation sent shockwaves through the city. Mark found himself drawn into the investigation again, reluctantly helping detectives navigate the details. As the truth unfolded, he realized Ryan hadn't been wrong, just lost. The charity's director had indeed been skimming funds, using children's tragedy for personal gain. It sickened Mark to think of how close Ryan came to dying for trying to expose the truth. One afternoon, Mark visited Ryan in custody. The young man sat quietly, his wrists chained to the table, eyes empty. Mark studied him for a long moment before speaking. He told Ryan he understood, not condoning, not forgiving, but understanding. "You wanted to make someone pay," he said softly. "I've been there." Ryan looked up, tears welling, and for the first time, his mask cracked. "They didn't care," Ryan whispered. "No one ever does." Mark nodded slowly. "Sometimes, they don't. But if you let that destroy who you are, you lose twice, once to them, and once to yourself." It wasn't a lecture. It was a confession. In that quiet, sterile room, two broken men, one older, one younger, shared the silent understanding that pain doesn't disappear when you bury it. It grows roots. And it takes everything you have to stop it from taking over. That night, Mark drove home under a golden sunset. Emily was waiting at the porch, holding a drawing she made for him, a stick figure of her dad holding her hand, with the words "My hero." He knelt down, eyes misting, and hugged her tightly. For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him, not peace, but purpose. Weeks later, the city honored Mark with a medal for bravery, but he declined to attend the ceremony. Instead, he used that night to start something new. With help from honest members of the charity board, he founded the Claire Foundation, named after his late wife, a fund dedicated to helping children and teens affected by trauma, violence, and loss. He invited Ryan to join once he was released under rehabilitation. To everyone's surprise, Ryan accepted. The boy who almost destroyed lives found redemption helping others rebuild theirs. The Gala attack that could have ended in tragedy became the beginning of something beautiful, a movement born from pain, shaped by second chances, and carried forward by compassion. Mark knew he couldn't erase the past, but he could transform it into something that mattered. Years later, during one of the foundation's annual events, Mark stood quietly in the back, watching Emily, now 16, give a speech about forgiveness. Her voice trembled at first but grew strong as she spoke about how kindness can heal wounds that justice alone cannot. As she spoke, Ryan, now a young counselor, stood nearby, helping a group of children light candles in remembrance of lost loved ones. Mark's eyes glistened as he whispered to himself, "Back away now." It wasn't a command this time, it was a prayer. A reminder to step back from anger, from fear, from pain, and to let love take its place. He finally understood that saving people wasn't about stopping bullets or fighting evil. It was about being there when the world forgot, when hope was faint, when someone needed to believe that life could begin again.